Alright, so there's a lot of new changes coming up for the game, and I just kind of want to sit down for a little bit and talk about them. Address kind of concerns, what I think about some of these, and the what. How it's going to impact this channel, PPEs, and Ergosphere. Please note that this is not a comprehensive list of the changes, and that some of this is going to be incredibly opinionated. Anyone who scrolls through the Realm Reddit for about 5 minutes will see that everybody has their own opinions on what's good and what's bad about this update, and trying to sit here and change someone else's mind is impossible. So there's no point in really getting into this and expecting everybody to agree with me, because not a lot of people will. Not everybody has their own specific opinions about what makes a good and a bad change to the game, and it's all dependent. It's dependent on so many different things. It's dependent on player skill, classes they like, what they want out of the game. So me pretending to sit here and claim what is a good and what is a bad update is just inconceivably wrong. It just doesn't work, because someone somewhere is gonna call me stupid, and I expect to see that. I don't really want this to be a sort of discussion thing. I'm just sitting here kind of saying my own opinions and letting you guys know how my personal opinions will impact this channel, because that is important. That will impact if and how many videos I make and what I do with Ergosphere. So I just kind of wanted to lay all that out. And please keep in mind that this is still in public testing. This is still all subject to change. I'm just saying the way things are, this might impact what happens. So let's get into this. One of the first and really major ones, and there's no specific order to this, I just kind of did it on what the Realm Wiki said, is the Purification. How Puri only applies the Puri to the self, and its heal has been cut down to 120. I've seen a lot of people have really interesting takes on this. For me personally, I think the best way of going about this, judging on how debuff heavy the endgame is to just make it Puri everybody but not heal. I think that would have been the best way to go about this, because yeah, the entire endgame is dependent on debuffs, and there are things like pet stasis which cannot be pured, but I feel like that isn't a good way of going about this, just having things like armor break, confuse, pet stasis, and blind not be pured while the rest can. And there's always the argument of just dodge, the baseless, kick to the balls argument that most red stars make when people die, right? And I think it's a good thing. It's a good argument to make, I guess, if you want to be a cunt. And they're right. You should just dodge the debuffs, but it's hard when every second shot is a different debuff, and it's kind of hard to dodge when you're confused, slowed, blind, pet stasis, stunned, and slowed, and then also slowed, and then blinded in darkness. It's kind of hard to do that, and so that's kind of the concern I have with that. It's not really, it's crippling, but it's not if they do it, it's just whatever. It just means we have to be a little bit more cautious. One of the ones I can actually really get behind, though, is the pet change, how they are nerfing pets. One of my guild mates has a divine pet, 100 max, with heal magic, heal electric, and the game is just boring for him. It's not nothing is difficult about it. I think that really ruins the game, being able to just kind of traipse through things without any sort of concern. I think pets need to be nerfed. I see why people don't like it, but I personally understand it. Combat changes. Holy shit, there's a lot. Starting off with the debuffs, or the nerfs rather. Berserk and Damaging have both been cucked to 1.5? It goes from 1.5 to 1.25 times. That's honestly okay on its own. There's more about it later about how that's going to really impact things. Armored has been changed from 2 times to 1.5. That's fine too. I personally always thought Armored was a little bit busted. That's what I'm okay with. Now they're adding a new system for this, which is in combat and out of combat. Basically, Vit and Wiz have been doubled, but in combat it's halved, so it goes back to normal. So basically that hasn't changed. However, I think your pet is also halved, your pet healing time, which is whatever. However, the threshold for in combat, out of combat is 15 damage, which seems a little low to me. That's not too much damage, but I don't know. you tend to take a lot more small hits than you'd think, so it is kind of inconvenient for it to switch between the two, especially for like later game characters going into Godlands, where it's like, well, this isn't really necessary. I think the threshold should be bumped up to like 50 or something, because a lot of things tend to do around 50 damage, even to some max characters, especially the rogue classes. So I don't know. I think they should buff that. Exaltation is one of them. Exaltation could be really good for Ergosphere. How it works is it's almost, how I like to kind of compare it to, is like a campaign stat boost. It's kind of similar to what Realm of the Revenge of the Fallen did. I think it's kind of a knockoff of it, but whatever. Not entirely, but it's very similar to it, where the amount of dungeon completes you have kind of scales your stats, where you can get a total of +5 on any stat permanently for the character. So say I'm playing Mistake and I complete a certain number of nests, somewhere in the, I don't know, what is it, hundreds? I don't know. I have a permanent +5 dex on every single 8/8 Mystic that I ever do, which is fine for normal players and for Ergosphere, where Ergosphere you're only playing on that character until you hit, that certain star. So Exaltation is mostly useless on Ergosphere. It doesn't really matter for me. However, it's crippling for PPEs, because if Exaltation is just something that applies to any 8/8 character, it kind of busts the idea of a PPE. If as soon as you hit 8/8 and then you just immediately get a +25 in life because you've beat 400 orcs of sanctuaries. I think that kind of throws them out of the loop. There's a lot to Exaltation. There's a lot more than that. The Exaltation page on the wiki is long. There's a lot more than just stats. There's also just Exaltations, which do a lot of different things for your armor, your weapons, drop rates, there's a lot of it. It's a little overwhelming. I haven't had too much time to kind of look at it. It's a huge change to make. All of this being in one update is a little bit strange. HP scaling and halls. When I mentioned the Berserk and damaging earlier, this is where that kind of cripples you. Halls and other late game dungeons used to use linear HP scaling. 03 uses a quadratic system, and they're changing it over to an adaptive one, where I think it's also quadratic, it might just be slightly different. So there should be a page up right now of the difference between the two. Thank you to Chevio for putting this in Pop Hall's announcements. That's a huge margin. It's especially in combination with the lack of Puri and the Berserk and damaging, it's ridiculous. It makes the entire dungeon, because their idea is to make it more of a slow clear, be really methodical about it rather than the rapid pace that like most vet runs and some normal runs can achieve. I don't know. You're going to have to majorly boost drop rates to make this worthwhile, because you have to deal with minions who also, I'm pretty sure, have an adaptive scale to their health. You're going to need a ridiculously strong group for this, and so people who are new to endgame dungeons aren't really going to have that experience. And they are claiming to change drop rate changes. I don't know. Last time they said that they changed drop rates, they fucking castrated it. And at the beginning of March, I want to say, is when they were like, alright, so we're going to change it so halls no longer drop potions, so we don't fuck the economy. And then 03 came out and kind of fucked the economy. But realistically, who trades anymore? And they claimed that to counterbalance the lack of potions, they would increase the marble whites. I might just be the unluckiest motherfucker alive, but I have not seen any noticeable change. I don't think a lot of other people have. I would invite you all to actually let me know if you've seen any change in this. I have not. I feel like I get less shit now. It's a little ironic that the original dungeon that dropped the T14 armors is now arguably the worst source of the T14 armors. I feel like I get a lot more from nests and fungals than I do from halls. It might just be me, it might just be God being like, alright, we're going to give you a 5th star mother from your 12th nest, but we're just going to neglect you whenever you do halls. I don't know. Personally, I think that halls is a very frustrating dungeon. It isn't very, it prior to this update, it is not very difficult. It takes a little bit of time to master, but it's something I genuinely believe that the majority of the player base could be able to do. I am admittedly very biased about my opinions on halls because I've done these for so long. I am very biased about my hatred for them because it's something I've done for years. It's not a difficult dungeon anymore. I do die in them, but it's not a common thing. It's not something that happens nearly as much as it used to, and at this point I don't really pay attention when I do them. The only problem is when I'm trying to multitask. It's not a very difficult dungeon, and it's not rewarding. And I get why it's not, because it's now a very middle-of-the-road dungeon with the Sanctuary coming out, but at the same time, you could get better items from the Realm and completely bypass halls and do O3. Which to me seems a little strange if lore-wise, the Void Entity is supposed to be like the second hardest thing here. It's supposed to be the penultimate evil next to orcs. And then it's something that it's just like, you know what, fuck it, And I get why they're making it harder, to make it more, on a similar scale to the Sanctuary. I don't know. To me, it seems a tad unnecessary, where it's like, I don't know, you could just keep it the same and not many people would complain. There are going to be outliers like me who will complain regardless because my luck is garbage, but the majority of people like halls how it is, and I can see why. It's a very middle-of-the-road dungeon. It's just slightly more difficult than the Shatters, where you can get stuff that's potentially better. You're not guaranteed to get that stuff better, which is why Orcs 3's drop rates is so high, because it's such a hard dungeon where it's like, yeah, we should probably reward these sad bastards for making through it. But to me personally, halls is just a sack of shit. I am biased, and I see why people like it, though. Couple minor things. Immune times were changed. It is now impossible to perma-stun and perma-paralyze. There is a 3-second cooldown. Quat they removed Quat's cooldown, but they also kind of didn't, because Daze has a cooldown as well on enemies. Players also have a cooldown for debuffs on them. It's only for Paralyze and Petrify, which means it's impossible to be perma-paralyzed and perma-petrified, which is kind of nice. But the immunity only lasts for half a second longer than the original debuff. So it's not like a major thing, it's just something else. A couple of the classes have also been changed. Two of the ones that I'm really happy about are Paladin and Mistake. Paladin has increased by 5 to some of his stats, attack and dex being them. I'm pretty sure Vit as well. Not really a change to defense, obviously, that's already pretty high. Mystic has plus 5 attack for max and plus 10 dex for his max, putting it up to, 65 and... Is it 65 and 65? It might be. I know it's 65 dex, which is incredible. Mystic is a very good class, in my opinion, once you get the T5 and T6 orb. The Berserk makes it genuinely pretty good. It is cripplingly bad to start, though. Mystic PPEs are agonizingly slow at the beginning. Another minor thing is that Warrior also has Wizmod now. In exchange for that, though, Jug has increased by a couple seconds, 1 or 2 seconds on the Berserk and the Armored, in conjunction with the fact that Armored isn't going to be nearly as good, makes Jug only really half decent, but it does scale with Wizmod, and I'd like to think that's similar to how Devastation has an extra little nudge from Wizmod, so will Jug, so will other UT helmets, where, yeah, Wizmod drastically affects the damage from Scepter of Devastation. You can get its damage extremely high, almost 1.5 times its normal damage, up to 1.4k depending on your set. I'd like to think that that's what's going to happen with Jug as well, so it benefits more Wiz heavy sets, meaning Rezu could theoretically have a use on Warrior, but we'll see. One of the biggest changes, in my opinions, to the characters is the changes in wands. All but Lumiere plus the Vanity and the Vanity wands have a increase in 30% damage. That's fucking massive. Especially considering how Bulwark on Sorcerer is pretty damn strong. With their certain set and with certain buffs, you can get over 1,000 damage per shot, and they tend to hit rather rapidly. Bulwark is... it's a very situational item, but when it's good, it's good. Fallen is going to be doing a rather extreme amount of damage, so will other high tier wands. I understand why they didn't give Lumiere a damage buff, because Lumiere in the current game outstrips all other wands easily. That's basically it for a lot of the changes made. I don't know, this is like a lot of other players, this really kind of kills my motivation to play on my main account. I still really want to commit to doing Ergosphere, but I'm going to need to gun through Priest, because this makes me not want to really play Priest, even with the wand damage. I don't know when this is going to come out. I'm probably going to be done with Priest by the time this comes out. It's just been in PT for a little bit over a week now. I just wanted to make a short video kind of summarizing it and giving my opinions. I hope this doesn't change Ergosphere. It's just a lot of new shit to process, and it's like, I don't really think I want this to be a part of the game. Even with how much I hate halls and some of the other end-game dungeons, I would have been really fine if they left the majority of this out. The only things that I'm really like, yeah, I'm okay with this, are the stat changes for Pally Mystic. Wiz mods I could do without with Warrior, and pets. I really wanted them to nerf pets, armored, and change these two characters. Everything else here to me seems very out of place. It seems like they acknowledged that they just released a huge endgame thing and then suddenly decided, hey, how about we shake them up with this huge endgame dungeon and then continue to shake them up even more with a massive gameplay change. To me, it just seems, I don't know, it kind of kills my motivation to play this game. And I understand, I've heard a lot of other people say that they also are like, well, this is all a little too much, and it kind of isn't what I want from this game. So I'm just going to really realistically have to see what happens if this goes into the public version. Either way, that's just kind of my opinions about this. Thank y'all so much for watching. Feel free to flame me for my problems with the Purification in the comments. I'm sure a lot of people would be kind of butthurt about that because everybody has their own opinions. Yeah, I'll see you all in the next one.